This timeout is sponsored by Augie's Locker Room. Augie's features the largest collection of Notre Dame football memorabilia and gifts, including rare and hard-to-find items.
Hey, this is Augie, Augie's Locker Room. Website, augieslockerroom.com. Visit us here or the website.
Tim O'Malley with Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and John Brice of FootballScoop outside Notre Dame Stadium. We spoke with Marcus Freeman for 20 minutes for our official bowl update. We will have practice on Tuesday, but this will stand as the bowl update prior to the Sun Bowl. And I think the question I asked, unless I asked this improperly, and I think I did, I got it right, are there any other opt-outs that have not been listed on social media? Marcus Freeman said no, the team is intact. That means 9 defensive starters, including, as we expected, J.D. Bertrand, and as we did not expect, Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, and a couple of new additions to the offensive line, certainly with the tackles opting out of this game. And I asked about Emil Wagner and Tosh Baker, and Marcus Freeman immediately said Charles Jagasa is the leading candidate, is essentially the starter at left tackle for the Sun Bowl, which is a pretty amazing turn of events when you consider that he barely played this year. They didn't need for him to play, certainly. It's not going to cost him a year of eligibility, but he's going to start against Oregon State with the other two that I mentioned, Baker and Wagner, competing for the right tackle spot.
And JB, the 9 defensive starters, that includes Jack Kaiser, Riley Mills, of course Howard Cross, Xavier Watts. Kaiser, I mentioned, he has positional versatility. He can go play will, start this game for Marist Liufau. That opens the door for 3 young guys. And Marcus Freeman touched on all 3 of them today.
A lot of people are maybe a little bit down about the bowl system this year because there's more opt-outs than ever before between people preparing for the NFL and going into the portal. And that's not isolated to Notre Dame. That's nationwide. I love what we're going to see out of the bowls because it's going to be true glimpses of the futures of so many programs, and specifically within that at Notre Dame, I'm super excited to see the linebackers, not just Jack Kaiser transitioning into a role of more permanence, but also what we continue to see in the growth and development of Drake Bowen. The fact that Jaden Osbury can come back and play this game, not lose his red shirt. He'd played 4 games earlier this year, was opting for the red shirt, now can still play this bowl game, keep that red shirt. And then Sneed, we're going to see some more Sneed, and this is a critical time. I had some people asking me about Sneed this week. What he does right now to bank these practices, to build on efforts and carry to the bowl game and then into winter, I think will chart the course for him.
And of course, Sneed will play his same role in speed packages. Well, he will be a pass rusher on the defensive line, but Freeman did mention it will be Rover where Jalen Sneed fills in, because that indicates obviously that Jack Kaiser will be starting at will in place of Marist Liufau. But to wrap up the personnel part, wide receivers, we're not going to get anything specific. We get to see them practice, though. K.K. Smith and Deion Colsey, they have to augment the 4 returning. I'm including Matt Salerno and Jaden Thomas is healthy at this point. That's 6 receivers for the game.
Yeah, and we also will get a chance to watch Mike Brown coach the receivers coming up this week. We had an opportunity. Of course, he was introduced by Notre Dame last week. Marcus Freeman introduced him today. Very impressive guy. I asked him about developing 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounders. And I knew that he would, pass on the credit to those guys. But I thought the interesting thing there was that none of those 3 guys were strictly wide receivers coming into Cincinnati. Yeah. So that tells you a little bit about Mike Brown's ability to develop wide receivers.
Yeah, in other words, he volunteered. These guys were not natural wide receivers. They weren't wide receivers before they got there, when they went to the NFL. I guess there is one more personnel note to touch on. Kahanu Kia, the 2021 linebacker recruit who started playing some Viper, Marcus Freeman confirmed he will be here in January, rejoining the team from his mission in North Carolina. And then there's another guy here on campus. I didn't know we could talk about it, but it was asked about and it was answered. So C.J. Carr has begun practicing with Notre Dame.
Yeah, C.J. Carr, and not surprisingly, Marcus Freeman. Very glad to have him already on campus. Very glad to have him in meetings and out on the practice field discussing the fact that C.J. was like a kid on his first day of school. But then Marcus also very complimentary of the way that C.J. Carr threw the ball today. Again, we've seen this with some other high-profile quarterbacks in recent years at other programs. I don't think you can put a price tag on the worth of having C.J. Carr here, getting acclimated to his teammates, getting adjusted to Notre Dame football before he's inundated with a full course load in January, and then getting the benefit of these bowl practices. It's taking it's like adding HGH to being a January enrollee. You're getting a real extra dose to give yourself a chance to jumpstart.
And in terms of quarterbacks, he is not allowed to talk yet about Riley Leonard. That was shut down during the press conference. He did mention that any particular quarterback they might like to bring in would be an experienced and smart guy just like Sam Hartford, and maybe he plays from the same conference too. We can figure that out. But the one quarterback that's going to matter on the Sun Bowl, and it's going to be one unless there's an injury, Steve Angeli getting Kenny Minchie's getting plenty of practice reps, but Freeman mentioned we do not have plans to play 2 quarterbacks in the Sun Bowl.
Yeah, and a lot of people were asking about that. And you realistically, if you go into it with the intention of playing 2, you're not going to get the maximum out of either one of them. And so this is the right move. This is the move that I think virtually any football coach would make. Steve Angeli has earned that opportunity. Minchie will get in the game if that opportunity presents itself. But I think it's really important that Steve Angeli have this opportunity to prepare to be the starter for this game and go into the game with it not having to look over his shoulder and knowing that he's the guy to win the football game for him.
This is probably something we could bring up at a later date, but I did ask Mike Brown, do you want 10 receivers as kind of a bare minimum for a roster? 6 in a game day rotation. That's what we've heard from other people. 6, maybe a swing 7. He said he's used to 10 or 11. Obviously, 11's great. He joked that any receivers coach wants 12, but you're not going to get 12 because they need other positions in the program. But 10 or 11 guys is natural, and I brought it up only because if nothing else happens in the portal right now, if nobody opts out, nobody comes here, there are 10 wide receivers on Notre Dame's team heading into 2024.
And that's critical both for that position and also as you continue to develop your quarterbacks, whether it's Riley Leonard coming in, the continued growth of Steve Angeli, Minchie, and C.J. Carr. They have to have people to throw the ball to. You can't rely on the Monarch all the time, as great as that system is. You have to have guys to throw the ball to build some chemistry. That will give each of those quarterbacks a legitimate set of guys to work with. I think that's maybe one of the most understated but overly important pieces of this equation.
Final thing I want to throw to you, Tim.
I got one more, too.
Pete Sampson asked the question regarding December's schedule. There could be a playoff game being played right now. Yeah. Amid all these opt-outs, who's going pro, who's doing what, who leaves when you don't expect them to. Imagine Notre Dame having a playoff game right now, or anybody having a playoff game right now.
Marcus Freeman said he expects the bowl scenario to change beginning next year with the 12-team playoff. But what I wanted to add was I was kind of sort of possibly anticipating the announcement of a strength and conditioning coach today. We know that they are close to making that decision. We certainly expect that decision to be made before they go to El Paso. I think that we can safely assume that. It is imminent, but no announcement yet today.
That was actually going to be my closing point as well. You guys have been all over it. They have moved increasingly close to hiring a new strength and conditioning coach to replace Matt Bayless, and I can share that they've done some voluminous work there, some really in-depth interviews, a couple of different NFL guys, multiple Power 5 guys. We'll see which direction they go. I can tell you for sure that they spoke with multiple strength and conditioning coaches whose programs are either in the college football playoff or are in New Year's Six Bowls.
We have a practice to watch at about 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. John Brice has a basketball game to go cover now, and we will have a podcast on Monday morning, Irish Illustrated Insider, where I am sure as soon as it concludes taping, they will announce the strength and conditioning coach, because that's generally how it happens with our podcast. For Tim Priester and John Brice, I'm Tim O'Malley. This has been Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis.